Thank you all. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So sorry we're running a little bit behind, but just got out of a hydrogen meeting. We're trying to get hydrogen up and running in the United States. That's exactly correct. And we think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to have a new fuel that's less carbon, but basically has the horsepower of all of our fossil right now. Let me just give you a few things so you get an idea of how bad things are. I came here in November 15th of 2010. So let's say the first of 2011. In 2011, the debt as a percent of the GDP was 93.4%. Today, 120.1. Revenues were 2.3 trillion, 2011. Now they're 4.44. Outlays, expenses, 3.5 trillion back then. Now they're 6.14. Deficits was 1.3 back then, they're 1.7 now. Mandatory spending went from 2 trillion to 3.8 in a very short period of time. Nothing like this has ever happened in the history of our country. Discretionary spending, 1.4 to 1.72. Net interest, just the interest we're paying on the debt, was 227 billion back then. Now it's 659 billion. Defense spending was 700 billion. Now it's 805. Non-defense spending was 646 billion. Now it's 917. Social Security was 725 billion. Now it's 1 trillion 350 billion. Medicare spending was 560 billion. Now it's 839. Medicaid spending is 275. Now it's 616. Ladies and gentlemen, if we don't do something, all the young people here today are not going to make it. We're writing checks that you can't cash. We've got you upside down. It's all our fault. We haven't done anything about it. We've been trying. We had the Bull Simpson was an absolute roadmap of what we should have done a long time ago, and we didn't do it because of politics. We've got an opportunity right now with the Fiscal Responsibility Act to put our trajectory on a downward slope, so it's going to be great for your generation and your children and grandchildren, and we need to do it. We're going to have all hands on deck. Let me tell you how you got the debt and how we've accumulated so quickly. When you have a bill, and a bill comes up, and I'll take a bill, take any bill you want to. It's $1 trillion. We say, well, okay, we figure out what we want in a bill. Then they put what they call a CBO score to it, Congressional Budget Office. They're all guesstimates to a certain extent. But they say $1 trillion. Now, once you have a bill, and they say, well, over a 10-year period, this is the amount of money that bill should bring in. And that's exactly what you have to spend, or you think that's what you have to spend. What happens is we've never put a cap on, okay, if that's a CBO, what they think it's going to, and we think we've raised enough money or found enough money to pay for it, it should be negatory as far as to adding to the debt, right? It doesn't work that way. Once we pass the bill, and it's extremely more popular than what CBO could ever have estimated. They could have never guesstimated that this is going to be wildly popular. Now, at the end of 3 years, they've already used $1 trillion. Guess what? They got 7 years left of spending. How are they paying for it? Debt. It's debt financed. We have piled on, and if you're a Democrat, you want to blame Republicans, go ahead. If you're a Republican, you want to blame Democrats, go ahead. It is everybody's fault. And no one's been bashful about doing this, and they won't talk about it. So if you want to change one thing, your generation should demand. Anytime you have a CBO score and you hit that CBO score, all spending authority stops. If it's that good of a program, then basically come back to the legislature and say we need more appropriations and find more money or scale the program down that you can afford. Nobody is forced to live within their means. The other thing about the budget, by March 15th, the budget is supposed to transfer over from the House to the Senate. March 30th. By April 15th, we're supposed to have our budget. By the end of the fiscal year, September 30th, we're supposed to have a budget passed. That's in law. The law is written that way. You can find the law. There's no penalty to it. We've never done it. Never. It just doesn't happen. In the last 20 years in the United States of America, we've spent more money than we've taken in. There's no place in civil societies that you can do that. Only here, where you have a printing press, can you do it. Senator, only here.
We have got.
So with that, let's open her up. Let her fly.
Well, I think that summarizes a lot of our day very, very nicely.
Yeah.
Again, I want to thank you for coming here. But you have just mentioned the tremendous burdens that are on the shoulders of the young men and women, many of whom are well, we have young men and women in this audience who represent the entire population that has to bear this burden. So I want to give them an opportunity to ask you a question
Sure.
or two about how we can solve the this difficulty, and we'll start right here.
Yes, sir.
We've got microphones that we're well-disciplined groups, and they have to wait.
You're
for
ready
the
to roll. I
microphone.
know. I'm so sorry, but you had a great panel, so there's not much I can add to
It's
that.
great that you're here. Thank you. Please.
Well, thank you very
Go ahead and
much.
stand up.
Oh, I can.
And announce yourself. Your name?
I'm Nick Jacobson. I'm
Nick.
from rural Pennsylvania, so I'm your neighbor, but not too far over. And I think, as I'm thinking about this, when I grew up in my community, people need jobs, need industry. People talk a lot about the loss of industry, and I'm
Sure.
curious, as you think about fiscal responsibility long term, how do you match that with industrial policy, with bringing back jobs? How can we accomplish investing in American industry and the expensive investments that we need to make in American industry, particularly in rural America, with the kind of fiscal responsibility that we need to see in the long term?
The manufacturing world changed in America about 2001 when we allowed China in the WTO. When we allowed China in WTO, there's no restrictions. We're trying to build China up, an economy up. When that economy got built up, basically we let our capitalist mentality and our entrepreneurial spirit go over there without any restraints at all. So we start losing all our manufacturing jobs in Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia and all the heavy lifting states. That's exactly how it migrated out. Getting it back is a different situation. We were not short-sighted in not making sure, and let me just tell you, if your generation, you should make sure that whatever we do and any policies we have, the building blocks that we need to run day-to-day operations to secure our economy and defend our country should not be relied on really foreign countries of concern. The big four you have is China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. That's the big four. There's other ones that want to fall in that category that haven't been coming into a Western mentality. So what we're dealing with right there is the steel. That's a building block. Okay? Uranium, enriched uranium, is a building block. The things that we need, nickel alloy, all the things that we do for our industry and our defense industry, and also the technology. We have a CHIPS Act that we passed. We have a bipartisan infrastructure bill, and we have an IRA. We're bringing more jobs back to America today than ever in the last 2 to 3 decades. More investments in areas such as ours that lost an awful lot. And the bottom line is that's only a 10-year window now they have. 2032, they better be up and running and matured. If not, you have to continue on or find a way to continue it. We used incentives. We paid for the incentives basically by making corporations of $100 billion or more of assets pay a 15% minimum tax. And there's ways we didn't. We paid for this. But we just got to stay on top of it. How you attract them back? Government should be your partner, not your provider. If you're looking for government to be your provider, you're in trouble. You're in the wrong country, or you should be. The reason I couldn't vote for the BBB bill, and I told my friend, President Biden, we passed the BBB, Mr. President. You're changing the psyche of the nation. I come from the school of John F. Kennedy saying, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for it. Right. You're changing the psychic of the nation to how much more can my country do for me. That is not how I was raised, how I was born, how I worked my life, and what I believe in. I can't do it. So incentives, we're using incentive. If a government wants to be your partner, then they want you to succeed and they want to have a good outcome also. These bills will do it if we can keep politics out of it, which we can, but we can curb it a little bit.
It is hard. It is hard to do that. BBB is Building Back Better.
That was the Build Back Better. That was the president's
Exactly.
marquee piece of legislation, which was $3 to $6 trillion. Right. We already spent $5.2 trillion. You throw another 3 to 5 or 6, you throw us not only in a tailspin, a recession. We could have had a worldwide depression. We'd have thrown the market such in a tizzy we'd never recovered.
We have time. I think you have time
Sure.
for another
I'm
question
ready.
right over here. We got two
Senator
questions
Manchin,
over there.
First
Yes.
of all, thank you so much for taking the time
Sure.
here today. It's a huge pleasure. My name's Judah. I'm from New Hampshire, so a little far away from
I
here.
spent a little time up there.
Well, hope you loved it. Hope you
I
came in
did.
the autumn
Good
to
people.
see trees. So my question to you is that since obviously there are so many impending issues right
Yeah.
now coming due in our time, what would you be doing if you were part of our generation right now?
Well, part of your generation, the only thing, I've been asked that question so many times, and you have so much coming at you. I don't know how you all are able to sort out the amount of information coming to you with all the platforms. You've got social platforms, you've got basically cable news, and you have the basics, direct news through the channels. of some of your newspapers. I was on Intel, so I was always interested on what you were hearing other than what I was being received, because I couldn't even speak to 85 of my colleagues. There's 15 of us on Intel. We couldn't even tell the 85 other senators what we had been able to learn. So I would listen to all the different news media. Now, I will say this. NPR and PBS give it to you to decipher yourself. They don't editorialize it. They give you the raw facts. Okay, so they have been one of the best I've seen of not trying to editorialize it. Then you go to the major networks, CBS, ABC, and NBC, the networks, not their affiliates as far as their cable news. The social platforms, I swear to God, I'll tell it to you this way, gang. You're entitled to your own opinion. You're just not entitled to create your own facts to support your crazy opinions. Okay? That's right. So that's what you have to deal with. How you deal with it, you're going to have to somehow sort this out. And unless we change Section 230 that protected the internet and gave it blanket protection, which is crazy. And now we got AI coming at you. I don't know what in the world you do with AI. We're trying to put guardrails on that. We've learned, and we need to go back and fix some things. So I would say the way you're receiving your news and making sure it was factual. There was a time when I was growing up that you couldn't put anything false out there. You were in breach of losing your contract to be able to produce news anymore if you didn't have the originality, or basically the clause to where you had to have actuality to the news. You just couldn't make stuff up. But now you can. Let me just tell you the other thing. The politics in America has been weaponized. It has been weaponized because it has become a duopoly, and it's a business. You have the big business of Democrats and you have the big business of Republicans. You don't have many choices. The system is designed for the big business up here to make sure that they give you what they want to give you, whether you like it or not. So you're going to have 10 million people on each side elect who their nominee is going to be out of the two duopolies, DNR. Then you're going to have 150 million of us vote on what 20 million people gave us, 10 on the Ds and 10 on the rights. I don't know. I think it might be time for a little bit of a change, a little challenge. If you can't challenge, 55 to 60% of us live in the center left, center right. You're not way out here. You don't run your life there. When you're young, I was there. Well, we can do this, man. This sounds great. Let's try that. That's wonderful. You grow, you learn, you try everything. You'll come back. Because you know what? You'll find out your life will be a lot better and balanced if it's 20, 30% right, 20%, 30% left. Not 50% and not 50 this way. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. But that's where all the noise is. That's where all the chatter is. And they're sucking the oxygen out of the room. So what happens is they're playing to the loudest and extremes. The power the middle of this country has, if they would only exercise it, Donald Trump or Joe Biden will not get elected unless the reasonable, sensible people make the decision that one's better than the other. Now, if there's a third party that's truly based on sensibility, here's where you go. If I was you all, I would be pushing term limits. Trust me, we're here too long. We're here too long. And I'll tell you this, Supreme Court, 1 18-year term. President of the United States, 1 6-year term.
Wow.
Senate, 2 6-year terms. House, 6 2-year terms.
There you go.
You can change it up a little bit, okay? President should not have to be thinking about a re-election. Do what's right, sir. You know, time, mother time, father time, your legacy will tell whether you did a good job or not. Do the right thing. Don't be worried after you get one good year. President, basically, the first year is full bore out of the box. Other than that, they start basically, okay, your staff comes and says, we got to think about this. You know, we got an election coming up. Boom, boom, boom. It's just unbelievable.
You know, I think the 30th president of the United States might have agreed with you.
Let me tell you one thing. Yeah, George Washington. I have a George Washington.
Sure.
George Washington, basically, if you read his 1796 farewell speech, read it if you haven't. He says, beware of the political parties, for they will usurp the power from the people. He was so right, 1796. And he was afraid of Hamilton and Madison at that time. They hated each other. And they were going at it. So that's why he was only going to run one term, 4 years. He had to stay an extra 2 terms trying to calm him down a little bit.
Hi, Senator. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm Yash. I'm from Minnesota. So lots of economists and scientists have come to the consensus that there's going to be lots of costs from this whole climate change conundrum that we're facing the next couple of decades. And we've talked a lot about fiscal policy and how we need to preserve a balanced budget. How do you see the reconciliation of both of these factors, considering how costly it can be to have climate change that isn't responded to?
Well, let me just explain to you where we are today. We've had the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and then you had the IRA. That's an all-in energy bill. It's energy security. We're producing more energy today than ever in the history of the United States of America. We produce more than anywhere in the world today, cleaner and better. More fossil, cleaner and better, replacing the dirty fossil around the world into the market. And we're investing in the technology for the energy for the future. 90% of all pollution is going to come basically from Asia. 90% in the next 5 years or more. And it isn't right now. I mean, it's unbelievable. So how do you find the balance? The balance is this. You cannot, and it will not happen, that you will basically be able to eliminate your way to a cleaner environment. You can innovate it with technology. You can't say quit using it. Sovereign countries are going to use what's in the backyard. They watch what we did for all these years, they're going to do the same. And if you want to entice them, show them how to use what they have with the best technology the world has ever known. That's where we come in. No one else will do that. No one else has spent $500 billion incentivizing to find geothermal, SMRs, all the things we're doing, hydrogen, more battery capacities, things of this sort, more wind and solar, all the different things we want to do. But we need the horsepower to run this country. If you abandon that, I'll guarantee you will not be the superpower of the world. And the other, that's the thing I just worry about. I worry about also the finances we've talked about. If the reserve currency of the world is not the U.S. dollar, God help you all. I don't want to be in that world. I do not want to be in that world. That's the greatest hammer you've got. But use it for an incentive. Don't just use it to beat people up. Give people an incentive while they want to do what's good for the world order and get into, how do we bring Iran? I don't know if you're going to bring Iran. As long as you understand there's other countries, they'll never have our values. That's fine. We know how to deal with them. Just don't depend on them. Just don't depend on them. So the balance to be had, that's fine. We've reduced ours since 2007 more than any other nation. But you've got other countries, you've got close to 800 million people that have no energy. Can you imagine if we're back in the 1700s and early 1800s, we got no energy, where we'd be? You would be anything. I was over in India, maybe a decade or more ago, and I went through the rural parts of India. The job of most of the families in India, in rural India, was gathering up waste from animals, cooking it in the sun, and using it for fuel at night to either cook their food or heat their home. Now, you think they're going to care if you're burning a coal plant right next door, where they have any regulations on them at all, whether they basically have NOx, low NOx boilers, where they have scrubbers, or where they have bag houses, any of that. They don't care. They're not going to get upset. We got a light. We can cook. We can do all the things that we take for granted. You have to realize this is called global climate. It's not called North American climate. It's not called U.S. climate. It's global climate. But there are people here that want us to stop using everything. Trust me, I hear them quite a bit. They come and visit me. My path forward is about Americans together. How do we come together and understand? No one else is going to do it for us, gang. We got to do it ourselves. Don't worry about if you're a Democrat, Republican, and the other side's not the enemy. The other side's not. I can tell you where the enemies are. They're not here in America. We're all together. As long as we do that, we'll be fine.